Hey guys, what's up? It's me, Thomas. Tonight we're back here with Wrestling with Regret with another classic pay-per-view review. Tonight, well, time of year again. Time for WCW Spring Stampede 1998. And this one's called The NWO Comes Apart at the Seams. So yeah, looks like we're starting the fall of, well, the NWO. You know, the infighting that would beat the Hollywood and Wolfpack, I'm pretty sure. But, been around before. So let's see how the NWO starts to come apart, huh? Be sure to like, subscribe for more. Hope you enjoy it. Let's go. Oh, hey, Macho Man, what happened to you?
Justifiably in a position that I'd rather not be in.
Odd. I found the build-up. The pay-per-view.
It's the spring of 1998.
Hey, Brian.
WCW is still doing pretty well for itself at this point in the Monday Night War, even after they had to overcome the debacle of the Starrcade 97 main event. There is friction and there is dissension in the upper ranks of the New World Order. The formation of the Wolfpack is very much in the near future. And oh yeah, Sting is the babyface world champion if anybody cares about that. Time to look at Spring Stampede 1998, or as my editor misheard me recently on the phone, Spring Stampede 1998. This show took place on April 19th at the
Denver, Colorado.
Coliseum in Denver, Colorado. Nominated by the Mad Metalhead and Didymus over at patreon.com/wrestling with regret. The main storyline at this point in WCW is that power struggle in the NWO. You have Kevin Nash, Hollywood Hogan, and Randy Savage all fighting for control of the group, as well as fighting over who's going to be the next guy to take the world title off of Sting, potentially. Also, it's the middle of April, and how have we gone this far in the year without using Bret Hart worth a damn at this point, outside of a few interview sound bites?
If I see somebody getting screwed over, that's my call. Get rid of Hogan, get rid of Nash, and get rid of the NWO. Whether I win or lose isn't important so much, it's just getting a fair shot.
I think it was like the no-compete clause.
7,428 folks in attendance for what Tony Schiavone calls the springtime tradition. Yes,
from
that
the WWF.
big tradition that began in 1994, then didn't happen again until 97. The show also picked up about 275,000 buys. It's up about 65K from last year's Stampede, but down considerably from the previous several months of pay-per-views. Schiavone, Mike Tenay, and Bobby Heenan are on commentary here. Look at that beautiful set. The big barn, the taxidermied bull, the stagecoach, everyone coming into the sliding barn doors. Why didn't they make this set on Revenge? The first match on the card sees a member of Raven's flock, though not for much longer, in Saturn taking on Goldberg. Yes, at this point, Goldberg has dropped Bill from his name. He is at a whopping 73-0 in his streak, and he is super over at this point. He is clearly one of the most popular names in WCW at this time, certainly on a different level of popularity from, say, the Cruiserweights or what's going on in the NWO. At this point, Goldberg is still very much a hot commodity, and considering how he's booked, it's very easy to see why. We do know that the next night on Nitro, he will be wrestling for the U.S. Championship, either Diamond Dallas Page or Raven, depending on who wins that matchup tonight. The match begins.
I guess we'll see that when it
starts
comes
off
up
by blocking an abdominal stretch, just hucking Saturn all over the place. Kidman tries to interfere, and Goldberg just throws him at Saturn. Saturn comes back with a leg trip and a nice springboard leg drop. Saturn lays in the attacks for a while, but Goldberg reversing a suplex. Nice dropkick into Goldberg, who flies into the steps, and a head scissors off the apron. There is a scary slip off the ropes on the outside, but they recover and keep going nicely.
Nice landing there, Saturn.
There's a bit of miscommunication off the ropes, so they just do the spot again, and Goldberg kicks Saturn in the dome. The spear, the jackhammer is attempted, but Kidman once again tries to get involved. We get a low blow. Saturn trying a superplex, but Goldberg
gorilla press. See ya.
The Flock keeps trying to run in. Kidman eats a spear. Saturn gets the rings locked in on Goldberg, but he fights out into a badass-looking jackhammer.
Damn.
The win for Goldberg, and he is now 74-0. I give it 2 stars out of 5. This is a very glorified squash match.
Goldberg squash matches.
Pretty well what's going to happen before the bell even rings. But this was still a very entertaining match. I think Saturn just flying all over the place, bumping his ass off of Goldberg.
Good
and Kidman as well, for that matter.
Was
a great visual. Made
a couple botches.
It did get rickety.
Hard to ignore.
When there seemed to be some blown spots, some forgotten moments, and who knows what the cause of that is. But I think this match is a good reminder as to why Goldberg's best matches were under the 5-minute mark. This one went about 8 minutes.
Fair.
So
again, he's more of the power
and I think you would have had a
or
stronger,
explosive
more
type, not
squash.
drawn out matches.
Up next, some cruiserweight action as
Eddie
Chavo
and
Guerrero
Chavo.
Jr., accompanied by his uncle Eddie Guerrero, takes on a man whose match I just called recently at WrestleMania weekend in Ultimo Dragon. Last month, Eddie beat his nephew in an impromptu matchup, and as a condition of winning that match, basically has control over Chavo's entire life. It's like when the older sibling tells the younger sibling, well, you're going to be my slave for a whole month. That's basically what happens here with the Eddie-Chavo dynamic. Eddie is forcing Chavo into matches. He doesn't want to wrestling Eddie's matches for him, just trying to break him really mentally here, costing him matches and so forth. Then back on the Thunder before this show, Eddie offered Chavo his freedom if he can beat Ultimo tonight, but if he doesn't win, Eddie will come down on him twice as hard. A fan in the aisle throwing glitter on Eddie and Chavo, throw that person out for that shit. Side note, just saying, regardless of politics, I would gladly vote for a presidential candidate who promised a federal ban on glitter. Fast action to start things off with these two. Ultimo Dragon doing a headstand on the turnbuckle, hits the quick kicks. Both guys are trading submissions and holds for a while. Dragon tying up Chavo on a variety of holds as Eddie cannot hide his disappointment. More fun back and forth. They're fighting on the top rope for a bit, teasing something big. On the apron, Dragon suplexing Chavo to the outside. Athai means dragon. Chavo responds to the planche to the outside. Ultimo with a cross body attempt, but Chavo drop kicking him in the air, perhaps a low blow. Referee trying to keep them separated as Eddie is livid that Chavo is not capitalizing and trying to cheat to win. He slaps Chavo in the face even. Chavo stays on the attack, goes for his tornado DDT, but is countered into the lethal Dragon Sleeper, and Ultimo wins. I give it 4 stars out of 5. Such a good match on this show.
Chavo, though.
One of my favorites of the evening. I think this is some great cruiserweight action, a really high-end display of what the division has to offer at this time in WCW, and I think Chavo and Dragon have great chemistry together, especially considering Chavo's not very deep into his time in the business yet. Also, I love the story they're telling here with Chavo and Eddie. That really helps build up their conflict and really helped elevate the finish in particular of this match. We go to the WCW.
I mean, you ain't wrong. Definitely feel like there's something major going on between the two. Definitely see a match in future for them. So, anyway, it looks like we got DDP in the online room. Let's see.
Web Zone, where Diamond Dallas Page is being interviewed by Lee Marshall. On we go to our next match for the World TV title. No time limit as Booker T defends against Chris Benoit.
No time limit.
For weeks now on Nitro, Booker and Chris have been wrestling for the TV championship in some great matches that have all gone to time limit draws, which has led to this big match with no time limit. There will indeed be a winner here. Fierce locking up to start things off. These guys not wasting any time with takedowns. Benoit tries to focus on the legs, but Booker is still pretty powerful early on. It's a very evenly matched contest. No clear advantage between either guy for a while until Booker's knocked off the apron and onto the floor. Benoit begins to take over. He hits the flying headbutt. We get a cover and a rope break. We're just past the 10-minute mark of the match now. Benoit starts hitting those rolling Germans. A huge
how long is this going to go, considering like the multiple like
Booker gets some hope though with a big spine buster. He comes back. Everyone's raising the roof. Booker goes to the axe kick, but Benoit pulls Mickey J into the way. The referee is down. The crippler crossface is applied. Booker might have tapped before grabbing the ropes. Benoit goes to pick up the referee, but Booker hits the side kick over Mickey J to hit Benoit. The cover, the win. Booker retains. This one gets
nice shot, Booker, though.
I'll give him that. I really enjoyed this match. These two just beat the hell out of
sidekick from
with a great level of intensity. And what I like about this match and this time period especially is just this is the feud that really helped cement Booker T's status as like a future top star. Like this is the feud here, I'd say. This and the Best of 7 series that is soon to follow with these two that really cements Booker as like, okay, he's a single star now. Like he and Stevie Ray, fun tag team, but Booker T is the future. There was a little bit of controversy tacked on to the end of this one, far from the end of their rivalry, but it leaves you wanting more, and so that's why I like the match.
Amen,
Hard left into Snoozeville up next as Kurt Hennig with Rick Rude takes on the British Bulldog with Jimmy Jam Neidhart.
Bulldog and
this one's kind of a sub-rivalry of sorts within the WCW NWO overarching feud, as you just kind of individual members of each team kind of go.
Oh yeah, isn't Kurt part of the NWO at this point?
Other people in the respective squads. They talk a lot about the history of Hennig and and Rude as friends over the last 25 years in wrestling. This is also one of the few times right now in WCW programming that I can see where Bret Hart is actually kind of a factor and kind of being utilized here. We've seen him trying to help out his brothers-in-law during the build. Actually, my favorite Bret and WCW moment thus far comes in the build to this. It's kind of a throwaway bit, but there's this segment near the end of a Nitro where Bret is kind of like fighting off all the members of the NWO, it seems. Bret hits Hennig with an inverted atomic drop, and Kurt just sells it like, yikes, ouch, I'm going to scoot on out of here. In fact, things are so acrimonious between the two.
I mean, I saw the atomic drop where he just flew over the top rope.
There was a bit of use of handcuffs in the build to this. There's a last-minute stipulation added to this thing that Jim Neidhart and Rick Rude need to be handcuffed to each other at ringside. Where have we just seen this like 2 weeks earlier? Bulldog with an early jump on Hennig begins to attack his injured leg. Kurt comes back with some chops. Rude is flailing to get in, but Neidhart, who's all about that sweatpants life, pulls him back out. Bulldog ramming Hennig into the turnbuckle pads, working their way down. He goes for a sharpshooter, but suddenly Jim Neidhart is seemingly straight up assaulting a police officer while Rude somehow gets free from the handcuffs. Rude helping out Hennig, and that allows him to
officer
win. We soon realize the cop is actually Vincent in disguise, who's now helping his fellow NWO buddies. When do they swap out the two black cops in this scene? Hennig and Rude beat the hell out of the Bulldog. Rude chokes him and Neidhart with a nightstick, and that's pretty much how this segment ends. I give it a half star out of 5. It was a bad match with a worse finish, though I will say I laughed my ass off when we saw Virgil in the cop uniform, the big switcheroo they did at the end of the match. But if we're going to compare this to its current contemporary in Triple H, Owen Hart at WrestleMania 14 with Slaughter and Chyna handcuffed at ringside, I would say that Triple H and Owen was a vastly superior match. Just the physicality in this one was not great.
No two ways about that.
Also, can I just say that Hennig and Rude are probably my candidates for two of the least relevant or like necessary NWO members. Like those two, Dusty Rhodes and Ted DiBiase, I'm like, why are you in this team? None of you fit the vibe of the NWO at all. Well, them and like Michael Wall Street probably. Cruiserweight champion.
I guess not much need for managers.
Chris Jericho defends against Prince Nakimaki. I mean Iakea.
Yes,
the future artist known as Prince Iakea is a young up-and-comer at this point, and is the latest challenger to Chris Jericho as the Cruiserweight champion. He's been on a big roll as of late, recently embracing his heel side. He's had a lot of trophies, both metaphorical and physical, at his disposal here. He's got Rey Mysterio's knee, Juventude's mask, and most recently, Dean Malenko's pride and dignity. Jericho beat Dean in a match at Uncensored the previous month. It was Dean's 4th pay-per-view loss in a row. He said it was time to go home, and he's been gone ever since, so Jericho naturally continues to pour it on as the weeks continue, including his now famous list of 1,004 holds. Armbar. I've said it before and I'll say it again. It was this character, you know, when I first started watching wrestling, this era of Chris Jericho was one of the things that got me so hooked into WCW, wrestling in general. I mean, this character to me was one of the best. Jericho with a shoelace wrapped around his head. He quotes Cheap Trick on his way to the ring and wants to give a shout out to Malenko, who he says is currently in the Where Are They Now file. As the match begins and Iakea gets a start on Jericho, Mike Tenay contradicting a statement that Heenan said at the beginning of the match, because Bobby said, oh, I talked to Dean Malenko recently and he said that Jericho's the best, and Tenay was like, well, Malenko hasn't been around ever since Uncensored, so there's no way you talk to him. And Heenan goes, oh, well, he looked like Dean Malenko when I saw him, you know, he had a tattered t-shirt and torn up shoes and everything. Like, I thought that was hilarious. Iakea with a big dive to Jericho, keeping the pressure applied, but Jericho hits him with a drop toe hold into the ropes and takes over. He goes for a big old flying nothing, but Iakea sees it coming and makes a big comeback. Jericho countering a victory roll attempt with a lion tamer. There's a rope break. They both go up top and they both crash and burn. Back in the ring,
surprisingly, the ref can get hit.
Another lion tamer attempt is countered. Northern Lights and a rope break. Prince with a twisting super sunset flip attempt, but Jericho getting him in the hole
Still
after
rolled
a
through.
third attempt. Iakea taps and Jericho retains. He grabs Iakea's entrance sarong and takes it as yet another trophy to add to his collection. This one gets 3.5 stars out of 5 for me. Another solid cruiserweight / mid-card match here at a WCW pay-per-view. That's kind of what we come to expect in this era of the company. The cruiserweight matches on this show, and there is one still to come, they are all very entertaining in their own way, but they all tell very distinctly different stories. And what I like about Jericho at this point is he is definitely a sniveling coward heel on the microphone, but he's not quite that way in the ring yet. He's still very capable. He's not like a total incompetent, or he's not chicken shit. He's just like still very business in the ring. And that's always been one of my favorite combinations. If you can be entertaining and hilarious on the mic, but still be like treated seriously as a competitor, I think that's the perfect
like William Regal.
Back in the webs.
I mean, explains his love for William Regal, which makes sense. Poor Ikea. He actually did pretty well. But Jericho's still pretty white hot, so oof. I have to wait a few months. Anyway, moving on.
Lee Marshall reminding Raven that that's not his actual U.S. title at the moment, and Raven says revenge is a dish best served cold. Up we go now to a grudge tag team match as Buff Bagwell and Scott Steiner take on Rick Steiner and Lex Luger. Back at Super Brawl, Scott turned on his brother Rick and joined up with the NWO, completely changed his look, and Big Papa Pump was born. He began hanging out with Buff Bagwell a lot, and this match has been made so Rick can finally get his hands on his little brother, but Bagwell and Scott, of course, have been protesting from the very beginning. Buff shows up with a badly made cast on his hand. They say the match has to be canceled because Buff is hurt. Buff is using an earlier edict that was established by James J. Dillon, who's the chairman of the executive committee, saying, hey, Randy Savage needs a doctor's note to compete tonight, so therefore I need a doctor's note and I don't have clearance, so I guess we can't wrestle. But J.J. Dillon brings in an orthopedic surgeon flown in from Atlanta to make the call, so he's checking on it. As he's doing that, though, Buff grabbing Dillon by the shirt with his supposedly injured hand, and the match is on. Bagwell early jump on Rick, but the dog-faced gremlin with a great-looking slam. Scott jumping his brother again, Buff on top. Scott and Buff trade quick tags, working over Rick for several minutes.
Braun Breaker, aka I think Buff Bagwell's son actually just turned heel a while back.
Goes to the torture rack, but is cut off. A double team move is thwarted. Scott and Rick finally alone. Scott skedaddles. They both run to the back. Bagwell goes for the blockbuster, but Rick comes back and shoves him down. The rack on the stuff. Bagwell submits, and Luger and Rick win. I'm going to give it 1.5 stars out of 5. It was a fairly quick and academic tag team match here. You know, it was kind of helping
nothing new.
Be a lateral move toward the next step in the Scott and Rick rivalry, because Rick takes all the heat, doesn't really get to show his strength against Scott here. Luger comes in and dominates, and that's pretty much all she wrote. So we're going to get that Rick and Scott confrontation somewhere else down the road.
Yeah, a little later.
Gene plugging the hotline on stage. Then we go to a bonus unadvertised match as Psychosis takes on La Parka. La Parka doing a little dance to start things off. Chops Psychosis so hard in the chest, it makes him spin a lot. Psychosis comes back, big head scissors, and he dives to the outside. La Parka on the apron.
Don't see this often.
Body scissor to pull Psy out of the ring, follows up with a springboard moonsault. La Parka knocks Psychosis off the ropes, does a dance again, gets crotch on the top rope. Psychosis hits a twisting plancha off the top to the floor. A very cool spot here where Psychosis gets the legs up in the corner but gets caught and slammed. La Parka keeps pinning but pulling his opponent up at the last minute. La Parka caught in the ropes and takes a big guillotine leg drop though for the win. I give it 2.5 stars out of 5. It was a pretty decent match, some fun high flying in this one.
Not a lot of build.
There was a little bit of depth added to this thing. Thanks in part to the commentary, because I was watching the build to this show and I kind of forgot why La Parka and Psychosis are fighting until commentary reminded me. It is just kind of hard for me to get into these bonus matches sometimes because it's just not part. It just feels like it kind of goes against the flow of everything else the show has been presenting. The commentary team kills some time as they set up a pole in the ring for bat match. It's time for the tag team bat on a pole match as Hollywood Hogan and Kevin Nash take on the Giant and Rowdy Roddy Piper. A few weeks ago on Nitro, Commissioner Roddy Piper said he was putting a stop to all the bat attacks in WCW. No more bats, except for this bat match we're going to have at this pay-per-view and all these other times bats have continued to be used in the build. It is trouble in paradise for two of the founding members of the New World Order. Like I said at the top of this review, Hogan and Nash are in a bit of a power struggle in the organization, and of course they're still dealing with Savage and all of his madness, so to speak. So the point of this match is the first person to grab the bat from the pole will be able to use it in the match, and oh my god, look at how high up this bat is. Who's going to grab this thing? Great line by Hogan.
Probably the Giants.
Oh, man, and good lord, what is that on the Giant's arm? Is that a burn or a bug bite that was horribly infected? Piper goes to the bat.
Let's just hope it was a burn.
Looks as if it's going to snap in two when he climbs it. Hogan and Nash put a stop to him for a moment. Hogan gets knocked around by Piper and Giant. Hogan grabs his weight belt and gets to the strapations, brother. Hogan is vulnerable as the Giant shows up and whips Hogan, then spanks him. Hogan gives Piper a low blow. Both he and Hogan are down. Nash is tagged in. He tells Piper he wants the big man. Nash and Giant clash like a couple of titans. The NWO with some cheap shots behind the referee's back, but if we're allowing belt shots, then why are we having a referee enforce tags? We get a double boot from the big man and they both go down. Piper and Hogan are tagged in. They trade blows. Piper mule kicking Nash, and the referee's got to
Oh.
pretend like he didn't just see it because there are rules in this thing apparently. Giant with a damn drop kick to
Wow,
Nash.
goodbye,
With support
Nash.
from the Giant, Piper grabs the bat. Hogan takes it from Piper and then throws it away. In comes the Disciple, a.k.a. Ed Leslie, with his best look he ever had in his career, carrying
Brutus.
his own bat. He hands it to Hogan, hits the Giant with it with the referee distracted. Hogan goes to hit Piper's bad hit, but he hits Nash instead.
Oh, no.
Piper beating the hell out of Hogan and Nash with the bat. Hogan begs off, Disciple distracts. Hogan hits Piper once more and pins to win. After the bell, Nash upset with Hollywood, but Hogan wants to make it up for him by letting him powerbomb the Giant, but it was a setup as he decks
Again.
Nash instead. Giant wakes
Yeah,
back
that's
up and
twice
breaks the
now.
bat over his knee like so as Hogan powders. This one gets 1 star out of 5 for
Sheesh.
me. It would be my choice for the worst match of the night were it not for Bulldog versus Hennig, but I think this is just
Yeah,
a bigger
true.
match considering the star power. And so, yeah, it was a hard one to get
also,
through. And I'm just,
really,
I wish
Nash,
they could
you
stay
gotta fall for that
consistent on
twice.
the enforcement of rules, what's allowed in the match, what isn't, because it has literally never made any sense to me, regardless of like what era of WCW I'm watching here. And it also makes the next 2 matches feel a little bit weird in hindsight, seeing how
Really?
this one went down. But yeah, the whole bat switcheroo was stupid. Apparently it was because one bat was rubber, one was made of wood, so Giant
Okay.
could break the bat over the ring, so you had to have the wooden one, but the rubber one was for the hitting. It was, bat matches, pole matches, what are you going to do? In the semi-main event for the U.S.
Shouldn't
Championship,
we just
Diamond Dallas Page
stop
defends against the
after
man
the
who
match,
stole
though?
the physical belt from him in
Hey, Raven.
Raven, for a lot of weeks on promos, has blamed Page for derailing his career back in the old days of WCW. He says he was exiled to Chainsaw Island for 3 years, which, by the way, is the most
WCW.
awesome copyright-friendly euphemism from ECW I've ever heard.
Chainsaw
The
Island,
Flock's
yeah.
still sitting at ringside.
With Chainsaw
as they often
Charlie,
did.
not surprised.
Sick Boy grabs Page, but the double team backfires as the match begins. Raven getting knocked out of the ring, DDP not far behind, each man trying their own finisher, but the other man is able to escape. In this Ravens Rules match, we go up the ramp, they make their way to the stagecoach. Page climbs up top, diving off of the Raven. Weapons, wagon wheels, fences, a suplex
There
into
you
the
go.
web zone. Up in the stands, Raven dropping down onto Page on a table, but it does not break. Raven
Ow.
grabbing a trash can. Tony's like, oh my God,
That
this
a
could end
cowbell?
it here. And I'm like, this could end it? Finally,
Really?
back into the ring. Sick Boy has a
Yeah, I'm
kitchen
like,
sink
really?
and hands it to Raven.
A little early there,
He jumps to the
Shivani.
bull rope, but Page fights back and a drop toe hold into the sink. The old Drano maneuver, says Shivani. Kidman and Sick Boy interfere again. There's a kick out. In comes Terrible Van Hammer, who also accidentally hits his own leader. Low blow on Page, and here comes the Yeti, who slams Page, and he still kicks out. Lodi tosses in a stop sign, but Page grabs it and uses it for his own.
Bonk.
Diamond Cutter. on
Cutter.
Kidman. But in comes yet another guy who decks Page. Even flow by Raven. He wins and is now officially the new U.S. champion. Who's that bald guy? It's Horace
Tank
Boulder,
Abbott?
a.k.a. Horace Hogan. That's right,
Oh.
Hulk Hogan's nephew officially debuts for WCW here as the newest member of the flock. I give it 4 stars out of 5. This
Wonder
is
when
my
it's gonna
pick for
reveal
match
he's
of the night.
related
It's
at
really
all.
tied up there with Chavo and Ultimo, but I think this one is better one for me just based on
Yeah,
the
the
story.
car
It was a
crash.
very entertaining semi-main event matchup. And just
Raven gets the
another
belt.
example of
So,
what kind of
if we all know
breakout
how things
year
go,
DDP
he's gonna lose
had
that
since
to
early
Goldberg.
97. This is another example
think.
of that. And I think it was a fun
Who did
brawl. on
Goldberg get the
outside as
title
well.
from?
The
Kinda
story of
curious now.
DDP fighting all the different flock members and ultimately coming up short in the end was very well done, made him look really strong. Of course, as far as Raven goes in his U.S. title reign, it did not last very long because the very next night on Nitro, remember what I said about Goldberg? He challenged Raven for the belt that Monday and promptly beat him for it. And in our main event, a match
I
for
was-
the WCW Championship, which was made also into a no DQ match earlier in the evening, as
Sting and Macho
defends
Man?
the NWO's Randy Savage. With Hollywood Hogan
Medusa.
having failed to reclaim the world title from Sting, it was now Randy's turn, but of course Hogan has no time for that mess. These two fought in the main event of Uncensored the previous month, a steel cage match that went to a no contest and resolved absolutely nothing. In the build to this match,
not
Savage
surprised?
was run down by a red and yellow Viper outside the building, and strangely it was never officially revealed who did it, but we all kind of knew. Savage suffering
Yeah, let me
multiple
guess, Hogan?
injuries, but is still going to push through after removing his cast and getting a doctor's clearance to compete. By the way, it's worth pointing out, Sting is the champion here. Of course, he beat Hogan at Starrcade 97, beat him for reals in the rematch at Super Brawl, but like so many other babyface champions in history, he is kind of the least important part of this storyline. Savage is off to a hot
ouch.
start, tries to use his right hand, but his arm is still hurt. Action spills into the
forget?
stage area into the the fence, onto the wagon wheel. Didn't we all just see stuff like this a moment ago? Hey, there's some hay. Sting goes for a splash on the barricade and Savage gets out of the way.
Oh.
More back and forth with these two. Sting suplexing Savage on the floor. Randy with a low blow, back on the offensive. He goes for a flying nothing, but Sting cuts him off.
Oh.
Sting almost smooshes Charles Robinson, but he
I
stops,
say-
but then smooshes him anyway. Sting stings up from the pile driver as Elizabeth brings a chair into the ring. An awful chair shot by her.
Yeah,
but ends
wrong
up her
end.
getting beat up. Oh my God. In comes
See ya.
Hogan, who shoves Savage off the top rope. Now, it's worth pointing out, at Halloween Havoc 97, that famous moment near the end of the show,
yeah.
where Savage
Just a bit
reaches the top of
outside.
massive steel cage and lands feet first in the ring. That alone did a lot of damage to his ACL. And judging by the way he holds his leg after falling off the top rope here, it's safe to say that ligament is now gone. He still pushes through, takes a scorpion
Poor
death drop.
Savage.
In comes Kevin Nash, who attacks Sting. The recently unbanned but now rebanned powerbomb comes into play, and he jackknives Sting, puts Savage on top. The 3 count, the pin, and Savage wins his 3rd WCW championship. Garbage
poor
being thrown
Sting.
into the ring, which at this point is a weekly occurrence on this show, as Nash helps the Macho Man celebrate. I give it 3 stars out of 5. It's a good match, but good is about as high as I can really rate it. I think that the extra madness at the end, no pun intended, made things a bit more wild and exciting, but there was a lot of the no DQ elements that we had already seen in just the previous match that made this one feel kind of redundant. I will say, I don't think I've ever recalled
Not to
a
mention
spot
that
where Elizabeth
Sting was
got
kind of
beat
like
up
just
so much like she
forgotten
did in this one
footnote
moment
about
near the
this.
end.
Huh.
Kind of shocking. As for Savage, though, the good times as champion would not last. Because of that knee injury, he'd have to drop the belt to Hollywood Hogan the very next night on Nitro with some help from Bret the Hitman Hart. My grade for
boy.
WCW
You didn't have to show it.
Spring Stampede 1998
Spring
is a
Stampede.
B-. You know, whole match aside, Davey Boy and Kurt Hennig match aside, this is a pretty darn strong show. I think even though some of the
True,
character
somewhere in the middle,
development and
but
booking itself
definitely got more
might
pros
be a
and
little
cons.
rickety, I think the match quality, especially from the mid-card, is absolutely great. Definitely check out DDP and Raven. Check out Chavo and Ultimo Dragon. Check out Benoit and Booker T. I mean, there's a lot of gold in this show, even if some of the
That's
upper
good to hear.
echelon stuff, the upper tier stuff on this show is a bit lacking. I think you can still get a lot of enjoyment out of this show. Well, I hope you enjoyed this
to each your
review
own
of
what you find
Stampede
enjoyment in.
98. Let me know what you thought about the show in the comment section below. Give the video a thumbs up if you like it, and subscribe to Wrestling with Regret. Click that bell icon to get all the notifications when I drop new content. Well, in 2 weeks, folks, we go back to the year 2000 in that glorious time in WCW. We have just finished Uncensored 2000. Hulk Hogan won the Yappa Pie strap match.
Yappa Pie.
Sid Vicious retained the WCW Championship. But of course, all that means very little because we're about to enter the great championship reset brought about by Vince Russo and Eric Bischoff. And this next show takes us to the next chapter in that story. It's Spring Stampede 2000.
Oh boy, the title reset. That's next. I'll see you for 2 weeks on that one. But for now, I think I'm gonna go soak. I gotta listen up. So until next time, like, subscribe for more. See ya.